One morning, you walk to your window with your coffee, same as always, and the yard is empty. The feeder hangs still in the light. No movement in the shrubs, no flicker of wings in the branches where they always wait. The birds you have watched every single day for months are simply gone. And you stand there, longer than you expected to, scanning the edges of the yard, wondering what changed. You didn't do anything wrong, but something happened out there, something the birds already knew before you poured your first cup. This is not a random disappearance. It is not a broken feeder or a neighbor's new cat or some shift in the weather you haven't noticed yet. What you are watching, or not watching in this moment, is one of the most precisely orchestrated events in the natural world. And once you understand what is really happening in your yard during these silences, you will never look at an empty feeder the same way again. Before I take you into the science of what's happening, stay with me through this, because the answer is not one thing. It is 4 separate mechanisms, and each one is stranger than the last. If you're new here, subscribe now, because this is what we do every week. We don't just describe birds, we explain what they're actually doing and why it matters to you personally. Let's start with the mechanism that happens closest to your yard and closest to your birds' bodies, the molt. Sometime between late July and early November, the exact timing varies by species and geography, your backyard birds begin a process that temporarily dismantles everything that keeps them alive. Their feathers, the same structures that allow them to fly from predators, regulate their body temperature through a cold night and attract mates in the spring, start falling out. New feathers push through from beneath. The bird enters a window of weeks, during which it is slower, colder, and more exposed than at any other time of year. A study published in The Auk, Ornithological Advances measured the insulation loss in molting songbirds and found that birds undergoing primary feather replacement lose up to 40% of their thermal regulation capacity at peak molt. That is nearly half their ability to stay warm, and it arrives at the same time their flight performance degrades. Research from Lund University in Sweden found that molting starlings showed a 24% reduction in escape flight speed compared to the same birds measured outside molt season. They are slower, they are colder, they are being hunted by the same predators as always, with a body that is not performing at its best. What does a prey animal do when it suddenly becomes more vulnerable? It hides. The dense shrubs you walk past without thinking, the overgrown corner of your yard, the brush pile you keep meaning to clean up. During molt season, these are not yard clutter. They are survival infrastructure for your birds. Cornell Labs Project Feeder Watch data, collected from over 300,000 backyard surveys across North America, shows consistent 60 to 70% declines in feeder visit frequency during peak molt season, even when feeders are full and weather conditions are normal. The birds are not gone. They are within 50 feet of where you're standing, motionless in the brush, waiting for the risk calculation to change. Most backyard birders interpret the empty feeder as a signal to do something, change the seed, move the feeder, clean everything. And all of that disruption is unnecessary because the birds are already coming back. They just need the molt to end. Now let's talk about the second mechanism, one that challenges something most of us believe about our resident birds. We think of them as permanent. They are not. Research from the Max Planck Institute for Ornithology fitted house sparrows, a species almost universally classified as non-migratory and sedentary, with microtransmitters small enough to track without affecting normal behavior. What they found overturned a century of assumptions. 38% of birds classified as non-migratory made seasonal movements of 3 to 12 miles, with some individuals making these movements twice a year, in fall and in spring. 3 to 12 miles sounds manageable, but consider what that means for your yard. The cardinal you watched through every cold morning last winter, the one you recognize by the particular way it tilts its head at the feeder. There is a real chance that bird is currently in a completely different neighborhood, and the cardinal at your feeder right now is a bird you have never met before. This territory shifting follows a logic rooted in energy economics. Birds are constantly running a calculation between the calories spent traveling to a food source and the calories available when they arrive. Your feeder enters this calculation not as a fixed point, but as a variable, one that changes value depending on what else is available nearby. When late summer rains trigger a bloom of insects in a field 2 miles from your yard, that field becomes a higher value stop than your feeder, and the birds go there. When a cold front pushes natural food sources under snow, your feeder's value spikes and the birds return. You experience these fluctuations as random appearances and disappearances. For the birds, every movement is a rational response to information you don't have access to. Stay with me, because the next mechanism is the one that changes how you think about your yard's silence. The third reason your birds disappear is surveillance. Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks are built to hunt exactly the kind of birds that visit backyard feeders. They follow songbird populations with extraordinary precision, and they are very good at their work. A paper in the journal Behavioral Ecology documented songbird response to raptor presence at active feeders and found that a single hawk pass caused complete cessation of feeder activity for an average of 4 hours. Not 4 minutes, 4 hours. A second pass within that same morning extends the silent period through the rest of the day. You look out at noon, see an empty feeder, refill it. Look out at 3, see it untouched, and assume the birds are gone for good. They are 3 trees away, reading the air. Researchers at the University of Wisconsin installed taxidermied Cooper's hawk mounts near active feeders and measured the radius of behavioral suppression. Within 8 minutes of mount placement, 94% of birds had cleared the immediate feeder area. More strikingly, within 30 minutes, feeder activity at locations up to 150 meters away showed significant reductions. The alarm network that runs through a backyard bird community is faster and wider than most of us realize. One hawk, one pass, one alarm call, and the whole neighborhood goes quiet. Research from the University of Cambridge found that great tits maintained elevated vigilance behavior for up to 6 hours after a predator visit near their foraging sites, even when the predator was no longer visible. The absence of the hawk is not, by itself, enough information to resume normal behavior. The birds wait for signals from each other before they return. They are more careful than we are. And now the fourth mechanism, the one that feels the most personal to anyone who has watched their birds all spring and summer. Every year in late summer, the birds you watched grow up disappear, not because they died, because they were pushed out. Juvenile dispersal is one of the most universal behaviors in songbird biology, and it happens in your yard whether you notice it or not. Young birds hatched in the spring, some of them, possibly, from nests you watched being built in your own trees, are driven out of their natal territory by their own parents as summer ends. This is not abandonment. It is the mechanism by which bird populations spread across the landscape and avoid inbreeding. The British Trust for Ornithology tracked 1,400 individually banded juvenile robins from hatching through their first winter. 72% of those birds moved at least 1 mile from their birth site before establishing a new territory. 41% moved more than 3 miles. The birds from your yard are out there somewhere, at a feeder they've never visited before, learning a territory that has nothing to do with yours. Their place is taken, after a period of conflict, by other young birds doing the same thing from other yards. The cardinal at your feeder in October is not necessarily the cardinal at your feeder in June. The social hierarchy your birds established over months of competition resets every single year, and during the reset, feeder visits drop because the new birds are still learning whether your yard is safe. And this brings me to the finding that, to me, is the most remarkable thing in recent backyard bird research. Your birds are tracking your reliability. A study from the University of Exeter, published in Animal Cognition, tested whether birds would incorporate feeder consistency into their foraging decisions. 2 feeders, identical in every way except that one was refilled on a strict daily schedule and one was refilled randomly. Over 6 weeks, birds developed measurably stronger preferences for the reliable feeder. They returned to it 2.3 times faster after foraging elsewhere. They spent longer at it per visit. And when both feeders were experimentally emptied for 10 days and then both restocked, birds returned to the formerly reliable feeder at significantly higher rates for up to 3 weeks after the empty period ended. What this means is this: your feeder's history is part of its value. Every time it runs empty, you are not just missing a feeding day, you are writing a data point into a memory that your birds are actively consulting when they decide where to go. They are not forgiving about inconsistency. They update their mental map and route around you. Here is what you can do with everything I've just told you. When the birds disappear, wait 3 to 5 days before making any changes. The vast majority of disappearances are molt-related, hawk-related, or flock circuit-related, and all three resolve without intervention. Changing your seed or moving your feeder during a disappearance introduces new uncertainty at exactly the moment your birds are already recalibrating. Add dense cover within 7 feet of your feeder. Cornell lab research found a 34% increase in feeder use when escape cover was available within that distance. A brush pile counts. An unpruned native shrub counts. A dense trellis counts. This is not mess. This is the reason birds feel safe enough to be visible in your yard at all. Keep your feeder full on a consistent schedule. Reliability is a signal your birds are tracking in neural tissue that is, gram for gram, more metabolically active than any equivalent structure in the mammalian brain. They are paying attention to you. In late summer, add a clean, shallow water source. Molting birds need water for feather maintenance at the exact time they are minimizing exposure and avoiding open spaces. Fresh water in a low basin can pull birds out of cover who would otherwise wait until molt completion to visit your feeder again. And if you want to know whether a hawk is behind the silence, watch for mourning doves. Doves are less sensitive to small passerine alarm signals than sparrows and finches because the threat threshold for a larger body is different. A dove still feeding while your smaller birds are absent is one of the most reliable indicators that a Cooper's hawk has recently worked your yard. The dove is not braver, it is just doing different math. The yard that looked empty this morning is not empty. It is full of calculations your birds have already made about safety, about energy, about the reliability of your yard versus everything else available within their range. Every disappearance carries information. Every silence is a decision. The empty feeder is not a failure. It is a question your yard is asking every single morning. Are you worth coming back to? A brain the size of a walnut, running on seeds and insects and whatever warmth the morning offers, has been paying attention to your yard since the first time it landed there. It knows when the hawk came through. It knows how long the feeder was empty last month. It knows exactly which shrub to disappear into when things go wrong. It has been watching you. And now you know why. If this changed the way you see what's happening outside your window, subscribe. We go this deep every week. And I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a bird disappear for weeks and then come back and found yourself wondering whether it was the same individual? Tell me in the comments. I read every one.